back. So today I'm going to do the fourth episode in the first season of Strange New Worlds. It's called Memento Mori. This is a really excellent episode. I'm not going to go into a synopsis of the plot because it adds a bunch of time and everybody's seen it, so it's fine. Of course, if you haven't seen these Star Trek episodes, you really should. They're really great. Strange New Worlds really has nailed this. All right, so first off, I love that they have a lot of women in powerful positions on this show. It's really fun to see Uhura really getting control of her career in Starfleet. That's a big part of this episode. It's kind of the B story. Her and the head engineer do a lot of work together, and they do become very good friends throughout this season. But this is really where they kind of get to know each other, which is great. Also, Una, number one, she's basically Will Riker, if you're familiar with the Next Generation. She is the number one on the ship. So if they do away missions and stuff, she's the one who does them, right? The captain says you need to beam down to this planet. She puts together a team. They go down and they do this thing. And there's a great away mission in this episode. This episode is, this is the episode where they first kind of meet the Gorn, right? And I love monster movies, and this is a really great... I guess it's not really like a monster movie because we don't actually see the Gorn. We only see their ships. This is a ship combat episode, and it's really well done. It's great. If you like ship combat, if you like miniature war games or whatever, this is a great episode that you really, really should see. It's really good. But it opens with them going down to a planet because they've lost contact with them. And when they get down there, it's destroyed. And there's all these trails of blood and all kinds of stuff. It's kind of a scary episode, to be honest. I would call it the Halloween episode. I don't remember exactly when it aired the first time, but it's a scary episode. It's cool. And then there's another really great kind of tying into the horror of this. Eventually they find everybody, and they're actually in a ship orbiting the planet. And they're getting the people off of the ship. They can't beam them off because of the way the other ship is built. So they had to literally dock with the ship and have people walk off that ship onto their ship. So they're tethered to this ship. And this young girl is really terrified, and La'an talks to her. La'an has dealt with the Borg before, of course. So she kneels down to talk to this little girl, and the little girl says, I can't describe the monsters that I saw, because they don't know they're facing the Gorn yet. I can't describe the monsters that I saw, but they make a noise like this. And the little girl starts clicking her tongue right? And it's really creepy. And La'an figures out it's the Gorn, and they do this really neat shot. I think the director for this episode's really good. They do this really neat shot where she jumps up and looks out a window. There's the tunnel that they've used to connect the two ships has windows in it, so you can see out into space, which is a weird choice, but it's true. They're really used to being in space, clearly. But she looks out the window, and this Gorn ship decloaks, and you can see the reflection of the ship in the glass as you can see her. And then I think they actually do a reverse as well. I think you can see her reflection in the glass as you see the ship coming. And they can't raise the shields because they're docked to this other ship. So the Gorn ship just blasts the heck out of them. and everybody gets hurt, and you know, but some people die, all kinds of neat, scary stuff. Um, but that clicking of the tongue and then the image of her in the glass, it's really cool. It really sets up a nice, creepy vibe. Yeah, back to the strong women again. Luan is very sure about what needs to happen in order for the Enterprise to survive the attack of this other ship because it's really damaged. And she says, we must retreat. We must hide. We must regroup and figure out what we're going to do because these Gorn will not stop. So the captain listens to her, which is really nice. They do a good job of setting up the position that they're in, where the captain could easily say, stand down or whatever, but he takes the time, he processes, he listens, and he takes her advice because she has the most experience with them, of course. So they do decide to hide. They literally fly into a gas giant. Now, it's kind of a weird situation because there's a black hole that is slowly sucking in the gas giant, and they're flying in the gas giant to hide. So while they're in there hiding, the gas giant is losing mass. But they fly into the gas giant to hide. He takes her advice, which is very cool. And the pilot, she's great. She's very down to earth. Maybe even a little bit silly. This character, I do like the character. I can't remember her name right now, but she's the pilot. Or Ortega's, I think is her name. She's the pilot. Great character, super fun, but everything's very practical for her. She's a fighter pilot. She's the pilot of the ship. So when he says, take us into the gas giant, she says, right, fly into the cloud of death, which I thought was pretty good. A lot of the dialogue in this episode is really good. I think the episode is really well written. We'll get into a little bit more about that in just a minute. But yeah, it's got some snappy dialogue. Also, the med bay loses all its power, so they have to kind of fix people in an old-fashioned way. So the doctor asks the nurse, Nurse Chapel, how well can you sew? And she says, aces, right? Which is pretty funny. She doesn't look totally confident, but she sounds confident. So, and they do end up sewing up some people. Yeah, good writing. Probably my favorite example of the writing of this episode is they are inside the gas giant and nothing works. Their sensors don't work, nothing. And they don't know where the enemy is. They can't see anything. The enemy doesn't know where they are, they hope. So they're just sort of floating blind in this cloud. And then Spock comes up with this kind of technobabble and finds a way that he can track the enemy. So all of a sudden they got the big screen up and you can see where they are and this enemy ship is coming and the enemy ship goes past them because it can't see them, which is cool. But that's, that kind of technobabble is kind of a cop-out when it comes to writing. I know it's necessary because it's in the future and some things need to look magical to us because we're not in the future, right? So, okay, it's fine. But the writing in this is so brilliant. They do a great thing where they can't launch the torpedo because they can't guide it. All the guiding systems have failed. So the captain decides what he's going to do is get the center of the gas giant and then the Gorn ship and then their ship, right? He lines it up so the Gorn ship is right in between their ship and the center of mass. And then they just drop the torpedo out of the bay. They don't ignite it. They don't do anything. They literally drop it on the other ship, which is really cool. And that ship blows up, so the Technobabble worked. But then immediately 2 other ships swarm the Enterprise because that ship was just bait. So the Technobabble actually hurt them, which I just thought was brilliant to think they have a solution and then they're in trouble again is really great. And I know it's standard writing stuff, but I like to point it out. And I love that they tied it to the Technobabble. That they didn't just save the day with their Technobabble. They literally got themselves more in trouble because of it. So that was really cool. So now there's 2 more ships on them. One is a giant ship and one is a little fighter. And the little fighter is what they blew up before. So that was really neat. One kind of critique I have for this, and this is teeny tiny, okay? But one kind of critique I have is La'an kind of knows all the answers. And I don't mean that she solves every problem, because she doesn't, but she's very demanding about, we must do this, we must do this, we must do this. And it gets a bit repetitive. And I don't want to suggest that her character doesn't have growth or anything like that, because she does. At the beginning of the episode, everybody's wearing badges for people that they've lost. It's really the ships that they were on in the past, but it's Remembrance Day for the Star Trek universe. So everybody's wearing little badges, and La'an refuses to wear one. But by the end, she puts one on. And that's character growth. That's wonderful. But I feel like they could have not made her so repetitive. And it could be an actor's choice, right? It's possible that the actor and the director weren't working together enough to be able to say, we need to build this. We can't just be the same the whole time. But she kind of is the same the whole time. And personally, I sort of blame the writing. I don't really blame the actor, actress, or the director. All 3 of those things need to work together, to be perfectly honest. But the writing is very repetitive for her. So it's an easy trap for somebody to fall into, especially if you're filming out of order, which we know they were, right? You always film out of order. So it could be hard for them to gauge, where is she at this point? And it's TV, so it's going fast. So I wish they would have somehow built into the arc her insistence upon what needs to happen. I wish that could have grown, and that could have given her the ability to put on that badge at the end. Instead of that kind of just happening and her just being insistent the whole time. And it's nice. The captain gives her a little speech in the middle where he says, it is your job to always tell the truth, and you're doing a great job of that. But you must also instill hope. You know, and she says, I'm a very straightforward person. And he says, that's just fine, of course. And it is, for a character like, I mean, it's basically Worf, right? She's basically playing the character of Worf in this series. And he was that way too, right? He was unapologetic. He said what he thought, and it was great. I don't know how well they handled it in that series. They could have done better with Worf, but the actor was great. It's just the script writing got a little weird around Worf a lot of times. But in this series, they're doing an excellent job of having that person there and listening to that person and understanding that they're the expert. Unlike Worf, Worf did not get that respect, but she gets that respect, and that's amazing to see. But they need to be careful about her just peaking over and over and over again to make her point. You know, she needs some variation in there. It's just something for them to be careful of. But I'd give this episode a 9 easily. I mean, it's an excellent episode. I really enjoyed it, and they don't need to change anything. But if they're really getting nitpicky, they can work on that arc a little bit for her. Yeah, the last thing to kind of talk about is so the way they escape is they let the black hole suck them in with the debris from the gas giant. So the Gorn is watching. They get sucked into the black hole. The Gorn follows but doesn't dare to get too close. And they do a really neat thing where they describe if you're going into a black hole, things are going to redshift because they're moving away, right? If something is moving away from you, the light that is coming to your face is going to crush down. If you do a spectrum of it, like the Pink Floyd cover, you know, that where they put the light through the crystal and it breaks off into its colors. If something's moving away from you and light is coming towards your face from it, that light is going to redshift. It's going to squish down to the red side. And if it's moving towards you, the light's going to squish up to the blue side, I believe, is how all that works. So they talk about how because of redshift, when something gets sucked into a black hole, it looks like it stops because it is moving away from you as fast as or faster than the light that's coming away from it. There is a point where the light starts getting sucked in instead of coming to your eyes. So any light, it looks like it freezes there. Okay? And they do this really neat description of that. And he says, it's okay. We can slingshot around this black hole, and as long as we get close enough to it, we will freeze. And I thought that was really cool. But then they take it one step further and they say, and then we'll shoot this big bomb that we got down in the hangar deck out the back and blow it up, and they'll think our ship blew up. And I don't think I needed that extra step. They tied it in nicely with the B story. I don't even know what it is. It might be the thing that they're trying to deliver. Like they were just on a mission. They were delivering this thing. And apparently the thing overheated and then they needed to cool it down and they weren't able to do it. And they're like, I'm sorry, this thing's going to blow up. The whole time they're being attacked, right? The tension is high. It's cool. But they're like, I'm sorry, it's going to blow up. There's nothing we can do. We got to just throw it out. And it turns out that they need to throw something out, I guess, because not only do they need to look like they went into the black hole, but they need an explosion, I guess. So they decide, well, that's just a perfect coincidence. We'll look like we get sucked in, we'll throw it out the back, and it'll blow up. I kind of wish that they would have fixed it. So they go through all this work. Uhura and the engineer go through Hemmer. They go through all this work together. They get the thing fixed, and then the captain calls them and says, I'm sorry, you need to throw it out the back. I thought that would have been cooler than we can't fix it, we need to throw it out the back. Oh, that's perfect, we needed something to throw out the back anyway. You know, to me, I felt that they don't need, if you don't need a coincidence, you shouldn't use one. Right? I think we've probably all heard the idea that every story gets one coincidence. If you do more than one, you're going to hurt your story. And I'll take it one step further and say if you don't need a coincidence, don't use one. Really good stories don't have coincidences, I would assume, unless, of course, things can happen by coincidence is the point of the story, right? Not every story shouldn't have coincidences, but most should not. You don't need them. If you don't need a coincidence, don't use one. But they use a coincidence in this by having it just being ready to overheat. And oh, that's lucky. We need a bomb anyway. And it just sort of made it kind of cheap, that little part. And that's why it's a 9 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10. But it's an excellent episode. I really, really enjoyed it. I loved seeing all the characters go through the stuff they got to go through. Spock comes up with some brilliant decisions. Pike comes up with brilliant decisions. I've already talked about La'an and Una being awesome. Of course, Nurse Chapel has to sew people up because she's a student of ancient medicine, which is excellent, right? I mean, these characters, and of course, Hemmer and Uhura really shine in the work that they do down in the bay there, even though they don't get to fix the machine, which is too bad. They should have fixed it and then been ordered to throw it out. You know, I think that would have been better. But overall, excellent, really excellent stuff. Well, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this stuff, hit the like and maybe subscribe if you really like it. And have a great day.